Well, welcome to Bam Bam holster building again. Going to be building an Omni holster, and notice a lot of people that subscribe probably are making them themselves, so I ain't got no secrets. Empty. This is how you don't do it. Kills me how people will get a $400 to $600 gun and put it in nylon. It just ain't right, people. But anyways, this guy's gotten a couple of holsters from me, so I don't pick on him for sure. He's a pretty good sized fella. Omni holster is the one I propagate the most. I'll show you an example of it here in a minute. I didn't think that far ahead. Biggest and most important part of the whole thing is the paper. If the paper's wrong, ain't nothing gonna work. This is the one for a XD. And a lot of guys ask, how do you get the right pattern? How do you get the pattern started? I'd have to tell you, for the XDM, for instance, and it's going to be real similar. I mean, this one's real similar to the Glock. Any double stack, it's large similarities. The only difference is going to be the thickness and the design of the trigger. And once you get one pattern that you know works absolutely perfect, for me it used to be always a Glock 19 I used to carry. From there you alter the pattern. You know, I know that the trigger's a little different. There's a rail. Bring the line over, and it's a lot of playing around, to tell you the truth. I've heard a lot of mathematical formulas, and I haven't had success with them. They always come out too big. But doing it after doing a couple 400 or 500, you get a feel for what's right. I pull out an XDM pattern for an XD, and I know this one's a little thicker right in here, I believe it is. But I can look at the lines, see my stitch lines, see the center of it, and I know that thing's going to work. The whole thing you're trying to accomplish is a good snug fit. You don't want the slide release to hit any leather. That way you don't disengage your mag. And you want the trigger fully covered. At the same time, you want to be able to get in there and grip. Not to have to reposition the gun. And this one, I haven't measured the barrel yet. I think they're 4, but I've got a measurement for 3/8, and I'll make a little line on my pattern in a minute, just a little bit longer than that line, and it'll come out hunky-dory fine. Let me take a little pause and show you the Omni holster. All right, just an example of what the Omni holster is. This is a Glock 43, and this one, every time I show off a holster at the gun show, everybody looks at this particular holster and says, that is the coolest holster I've ever seen. The color of it, the stamping. I've had that holster longer than any other holster I have in inventory, I think. Pretty close to it. And all the compliments, but nobody buys it. This one goes back a little further. You can see I don't have the piece of leather coming up and covering this. And the one I'll cut out, you'll see that it's different. I figured out that if I bring the second piece up, it complicates matters a whole bunch. But as long as you get that thing right, the rigidity is there. And it won't fold over as much if you get it all sweaty. But the Omni, made to be worn inside. And on these, I leave the thing to where it can swivel. It will lock down tight. Does real well on a little gun. On a big gun, it starts to get to where, you know, it can move around a little bit. It'll lock down in place, but because it's not sewn in place, a big gun, you know, you got to realize it will move around a little bit. I carry a big 1M1, but I like the movement myself. Some people say that's an absolute taboo. Don't you dare do it. I say, teach his own. Got Fred the Wonder Dog in here, and so he'll be making his ruckus. That's where that'll ride. I can see in there where my lines are. I don't know if you can see that or not. That's right, will sure fall. Sweat guard covers this. So we just need to put it out on the leather. Everybody does it different. I've tried marking. Some people wet the leather. I'm like, that's doesn't work for me to mark on it, because if you use a pen, it can bleed over. Some people use a scratch awl. I've done that, but it don't usually work for me. You got to look for it too much. And but I keep a couple of pins around that are certain ones will bleed more than others. Trial and error. The way the ink comes off. Make sure there ain't no marks underneath there. And we will lay out our pattern. This guy ordered he just picked up one the other day, and he ordered an Omni for this and a mag carrier. You'll wind up seeing it too. And I'm going to go over that line. I know I need just a smidgen more, and that'll get me there. I'll exaggerate that just a little bit. And I'm making him a belt too. So anyways, the whole key to this, if you ask me, is making sure the paper stays where it's supposed to stay. Otherwise, if you trace it wrong, it ain't gonna turn out any good. I haven't made a video in a while. I've been kind of busy with some stuff. One thing I figured out is all the videos preceding this one, I had the iPhone I do this on. I had it turned around so I could see the screen, what was showing up on the screen. But then it turns out that inverts everything. Like looking in a mirror, I guess. So it's a little harder this way, but I have to walk off screen every time to stop it because I haven't found my clicker yet. And I didn't quite get ready for this, but let me go catch a couple of blades. And this is probably the biggest way I've been cutting them out. There's no end of ways, but if you watched other videos, you may have heard me talking about getting a custom-made knife made for doing this. That was a dismal failure. That thing's worthless. But hey, we living and we're learning. I have to kind of go this way because I just don't cut good the other way. I'll get that nice straight line there. Oops. Well, come on, Goober. Straight line, it took me a while to figure out if I'll make 2 passes, be less likely to have all the pressure and move the ruler around. Goober, if you go all the way through the leather. Okay. A couple things out of the way. I don't think you can see all that. And I'm going to block you a little bit, but you'll see some of it. The more and I do this, the more I'm figuring out if you can cut it nice and straight, it saves you a lot of time later. I used to kind of exaggerate every line and I'd sand forever. So you get better at doing it. When you go big time, you get you a clicker die. Stamps it all out in about 2 seconds. Man, I I didn't think this through because now I'm not in the right position to cut everything. And when I cut this away, if I've got a small piece of leather, I use a different knife because you kind of have to hold the leather down. And I know I'm probably blocking your view, but you'll notice I give it a little like that. Just kind of gets the motion started. One of the hardest things when you first start is cutting without slipping all the way through something. Well, that's a little awkward there. I haven't cut myself in a while. I'll probably do it on camera. And I'd say still, if I have a least favorite part, it's cutting them out, but that gets better and better. Whoops. Oh, that was just a little whoops. It's not a start over whoops. Looks like Fred the Wonder Dog fell asleep on us. I was worried he's going to be a distraction. Yep. Okay. So that holster's all cut out. Here in a minute we'll sand it up and everything else. But first, while I've got all this out, I'm going to cut out all my other holsters I got to get started on. And here's hoping that when I get back to this one, I'll turn the camera on. Okay. All cut out, 2 pieces, put that in there where you can see it. And the whole objective is for it to match perfectly, or in my opinion, if this size is a little smidgen too smaller, it's okay. If it's the other way around, don't work out too well, especially when you come to sewing. But the whole idea is it's cut out pretty good. Kudos to me. So pretty much when I sand it, I'm just making sure everything has gone nice and straight as I was cutting it. I'm not going to make hardly any corrections off. I might take off just a smidgen right there. Sander may drown you out. Actually, I'm not going to use that one. It's close. And just making sure when it comes to the burnishing, the straighter everything is when you start, works out better. And the line that I drew with the pen should just disappear. And I'm not really taking a lot off. Every time I do it, I take a little less. That's the cutting better. Well, there was a time this took forever. But when I'm looking at it, I'm making sure all the edges are just straight. And then I usually do this on a table. Put it on there and make sure it's gonna, when I glue them on there, they're gonna be matching just right. And I think I got it. When I turn this off, I'll probably take another look at her. Now we're going to go over and lay the pattern out on it. It's a start. And we'll step over to the bench. I've gotten a habit of I do most everything on one of these envelopes. Just makes it easier to work, if you ask me. Okay. Something I've really been working on is that belt's going to run right across there. That's a smidgen. I'd rather have it run right about there. This guy's going to carry appendix, or he's going to play with it. But I think I'd rather bring that up a little bit. Always evolving. There we go. So then, this is all good to go. I'm gonna make me a little mark where I'm gonna punch my hole. And I'm gonna pick the right punch, supposedly. That one will get me there. I try and make them, I'm not really sure if it's supposed to or not, but I try and make them where what I put in there, it'll be a T-nut, you'll see that later. It's just snug as snug can be. And that means wallering out this side. I'll show you that later. I'm just babbling now. That piece is ready to bevel and things. Now, see, I've got my, making sure it's right on there. Trace my pattern just how I do it. Poke my little holes. And as long as I ain't changed nothing, I'll poke a little hole right there. That's to be just underneath the reinforcement piece. If everything goes right, he'll never know I poked those two holes. And I do this with pencil, it just works better for me. Hard to see, but I've got punched out holes on both sides. And what this does is when I get ready to later, I'll be able to put the glue in just the right places. And a lot of people poke holes or whatever. I guess I did for the longest time. After a while you get to where you can kind of look at that and know where it ought to go. Whenever I get done, I'll glue this area, hold it over. But also, that's where I'm going to bevel. You don't bevel this side of this because you got to glue that together. Anyways, and to me, everything just works better while it's wet. And I don't usually do this, so I'll do this just to make sure I don't make a mess. Water is your friend with leather, and it's also your worst enemy. Got to dampen it a bunch to work it, but you got to not get drops of water on it. I found out the hard way, like it's real easy to get a drop of water on there. And if I do, kind of depends what color I'm dyeing it. I just stop what I'm doing, wet the whole piece of leather, that one too. Come back at it when it dries because otherwise you'll have a spot there. And you wet both pieces of leather because depending on how you're going to dye it, it might be obvious it affects the way the tone of the stuff comes out. You can't really see off camera, but I'm just got a bowl of water there, and I kind of have a sponge there. Kind of helps me when I use a bigger dauber. Helps me control how much I've actually got on there. And I can't see my camera, but I'm pretty sure I just drifted off screen. We're just talking. When it's wet, it burnishes easier. I actually learned that lesson when I started using better quality leather. Bevels easier, and it also makes burnishing easier later. That mark is there. See, later that'll go right there. Well, I don't want to bevel this part, otherwise there'll be a cavity in there. So it tells me where to start. Last time I had some people ask what I was using. This one is Berry King. It's probably the only foo-foo tool I have. Fancy, big name person. I bought it. It works pretty good, but it's also learned when I bought it. This one's a number 2. But one man's number 2 is another man's number 3. Everybody makes them different and calls them different numbers. 9 times out of 10, though, this is the one I use. Once you get used to it. Does a right fine job. That's all ready to go. Now that I've got my rounded corners, beveled edges, I'll be able to put a stitch groove in there in a minute. And since I always bevel it first, because it'll kind of make it consistent when I put the stitch groove in there in a minute. Otherwise you'll have a little unsmooth edge and the beveler will follow it, the edge when it follows. Everything's the way I want. Something I started doing not too long ago is while this is still damp, just to make that burnishing go better. This is like 1,000 grit or something like that. I've used the same piece for a long time. Yeah, it's 1,000 grit. And just makes it burnish a little better later. And when it's wet, it'll sand better. Alrighty then. Well, the marks are for later I'll stitch. It's called a stitch groove, but I think reality is just a place to sew. I don't know how much that thread winds up getting buried in there. On belts I buried a little more. And this is the around the edges one. And I made this up a long time ago. It's a bunch of thicknesses for different things. And you just make that, make sure it's in the right place when I start. If I do a belt, it's way over here. And actually that's for a double stitch. And that's for a belt, a little bit thicker, leaves some area to sand. You say he babbles a lot. Well, keep watching the video, you'll find out I'm consistent. I don't remember, I don't think I have any stamping to do on this one. Once I get past this point, if I do any stamping, I wet the leather, case it, do my stamping. If I don't, I still wet the leather because I put my maker's mark on there. The fanciest holster I ever made, I just mailed it. Actual Cayman overlay. Forgot to put my maker's mark on it. There we go. Now then, this is all ready. Actually, no, it ain't. I'm going to burnish this little edge before I go any further. That way when I dye it, just another. Drifted off camera, didn't I? Get a little extra wet. I've been using the wood burnisher that I bought at an estate sale not too long ago, but I'll use my other one right here. A little water. A little Dove soap. Or saddle soap, depends what you want to go. I don't think you can see that. I've got a bunch of, if I remember when I get done, I'll show you. Up above there is a pan left. Can't zoom, sorry, but that's just a bunch of different sanders and bevelers. And I hooked them up to my Dremel. That ought to get me. And it's still the principal way that I do it. I have brown ones and black ones because black's nasty. It'll transfer every time. And can't keep that on camera right there because I have to go over here. Friction, heat, results in the burnish. This is just a 1/8 drill bit, somebody asked me, inside of a Dremel, and it is a burlap sack. Little piece of it. I buy a pack of 10 from Springfield Leather, lasts forever, and put them on the bit. That's the hard part, is figuring out how to put them on there where they'll stay. I about figured it out. Once you do, I've been using this one for months. Until you figure it out, though, they kind of have a tendency to disintegrate on you. And that's just black electrical tape at the ends, holding it onto the bit. Where this starts the winding, there's a piece of electrical tape holding the cloth onto the bit. Then I wrap it, and then I tape it, and then I put a little super glue on the end of the black tape. That keeps it from keeps the tape from coming off. She hums pretty good. And I'm pretty sure this doesn't have any stamping. So here in a minute, I'm not going to video it, but I'll put my maker's mark on there. Basic stamp that I had made. And once the here in a little bit be ready to dye. I don't know if I'll get around to it today or not. Maybe this afternoon. That'll make it go. Kaboom. See you in a few.